JDXL went for the red side, so nothing's gonna change in terms of positioning for teams.
Badoom. Then nothing's gonna change.
But what can we?
Listen, they're on red side, so they can pick the exact same composition again. That's why I said it.
Salty run back, the double salty run back. That is going
The
to be
fanatic
amazing.
extraordinaire. What do you mean?
Wow, I don't know what is gonna happen. So, but tell me a little bit more about what can we expect. Should we expect Dan again on the Graves? It's not like, don't get me wrong, it's not. I don't hate Graves. Trouble. I know we're keeping our distance, and it's not like Dan is doing a bad job. Obviously not. It's just that he provides so much with other picks. I want to know more about the possibilities.
I just feel like XL were missing setup. That Aurelia did not work out. I don't want to see Cries ever again on to the Aurelia, even if he has counter pick. It needs to be something that he's extremely familiar with. It needs to be something that he's extremely proficient on. Even something like the Jax, I wouldn't mind in this particular game. Just something that we know Cries can pop off with. Aurelia was not in this game for me. I'm sorry. Something that Dan can set up fights with, and maybe a long range AD carry for the likes of Venza. Run it back. Go back to the Aphelios. Go back to the Varus. Go back to the Ash, maybe, and set up for your team yourself. There's so many picks that XL actually have shown in this tournament that could work so much better than the Samir. I feel like the Samir Rel are like kind of like the Kinder Egg. They're a surprise. It worked. Put it back into the box where you keep all the other toys and bring a new one out. Because I feel like these
Oh,
particular picks that are one off can work so well, but once your opponent has read the game you want to play, and Astralis did this very well, they will abuse that.
that is exactly what I was going to jump in. Do we get to see the submit and rail yet again? Because I don't think it's bringing the same results, just as you pointed out, as they did on the previous game. And we've seen Venzer playing with different champions. Maybe they shouldn't challenge that Lucian Nami and maybe get their priority towards the top and mid. What do you think about Jamal?
I mean, I'm kind of along the same thought processes here as Trouble at the moment. I think
Yeah.
if you let them go towards the Nami again for that B1, just go someone like Varus. It doesn't really matter what the support is, right? Whatever the support matchup is that you're comfortable with, allow Astralis to show their hands a little bit more, draft a little more neutral, and see if Astralis start to sort of show their hands early again towards more of a team fighting based composition so that you can answer it more effectively. Because again, it seems like if you aren't going to ban out this Swain, and if you're willing to do that but give over other picks, you may just end up struggling again in the team fighting department if you can't find these execution flaws and you're going to go towards these very, burst heavy comps where you need a lot of tempo and you need to be the first to the move and you need to be the first one finding the first couple of picks. Because right now, after that game too, Astralis kind of just have said to hell with trying to skill check you guys if we can just team fight and actually have a solid setup, because we don't think you guys are snowballing efficiently in the early game right now.
And when you have two teams like these, can you expect the same results of a team fight composition from both teams?
Oh, I mean, it's league is too like game by game, right? So I think there's
Yeah.
just too many variances. I think in the case of JDXL Astralis, I'm still very much in the camp of XL are definitely the stronger team. It's more about whether or not they're actually, the team part on the day, right? Whether or not they're actually all playing on the same page. That's always the bigger issue for me when it comes to JDXL. But we're here into picks and bans. Yumi's still gone from JDXL's side, but now it's actually Aatrox that joins the ban phase from the get-go here from Astralis' side.
And again, I honestly do not think that the Nami Lucian is an issue for JDXL in the bot lane. They've seemed to be able to neutralize it. Even when they took their tower, they were doing fine. That Lucian did not come out of laning phase pretty fed. I think it's the Viego that's the issue here, because it's a champion that always goes under the radar and snowballs his way through that late game unscathed. And when he does get that first reset, then he snowballs an entire team fight. That one and Swain. And I'm waiting to see here if XL are possibly going to take that Viego away from Taxa and just force him on a new champion game number 3. Instead, Lucian Nami was their issue here. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if I actually see them lock in that Viego.
I think with Nami gone, it's a really, really valid take now, in my opinion.
Varus,
you don't really have to show your hand on anything else. If you go the Viego, Dan is probably going to take the Graves, but we've been talking about the Varus all series long. It's going to get locked in finally at B1. And now, what will the answer be from JDXL, right? Are you still going to go towards these super aggressive, Rel plus X lanes? The Graves is still going to be the flavor of the series here, it seems like, for Dan, at least by this hover. maybe they swap it up, maybe they go the Viego and take it away, but no, the lock-in goes through. So now, what will the answer be to this Varus? Are you going to try and match it 80 to 80 now? I feel like you kind of want to, because if you give over a positive AD matchup and then also a positive support matchup on the bottom side, the Varus lane is just going to absolutely smash you to bits.
I miss the good old volley bad days. That's all I want to say.
I was going to give you like, go.
I'm really happy. We talked about Ashe earlier on. I'm so happy they put Invenza on a little bit more facilitating role as an AD carry, another on-hit AD carry towards the bot side. It could be a support. FTG could be taking it in his hands as well. But I do really like the fact that we're seeing Ashe right here locked in. This is something that can create a lot of room and engage through the AD carry kit itself.
By the way, first time we get to see Aimer available and the Ashe is already locked in, so this could be the combo to the bot side to neutralize whatever's going to appear. Although the Silas could be the plan here for Senkox to follow up with that Silas. With that vehicle, yeah.
Okay, so Silas. A lot of skirmishing from the 2v2.
You're looking at Akali here because Morosco is known for his Akali. This is a skilled matchup, but maybe FTG pulls out a barrel out of nowhere. Hammerdinger has been a permaban in this entire series. And mind you, Aatrox has always been a second role ban for the set of Astralis, but this time they swapped the Hammerdinger with the Aatrox, so it is open. It is going to get locked in. Extremely obnoxious bot lane. Varus has already been locked in. Let's see what they're going to choose to pair it up with. Things like Kamas, Lulu, Sorakas, anything that can keep you sustained and up in lane and shielded is usually what people gravitate towards. Unless, again, Kiba wants to leave Respect all alone in lane.
Yeah, my big thing right now is that Astralis are really lacking on engage tools. And if you don't really have those tools, things like Viego and Silas can kind of struggle. JDXL, however, are going to go towards the top side in their first ban and pinch away the Gnar. So it seems like they're not too fast. They feel like with things like Chains of Corruption and potentially, some stolen ornaments away from Senkox's end, that they might have enough engage tools to work with. I think Astralis are likely just going to remove away Morosco champions. They have the Silas in their hands already, so just take away Morosco champion pool. It's relatively tried and tested. It's more about what they actually want to go to, right? With the Heimerdinger there, they can actually remove away AD mids pretty validly here, just simply because of how much damage Heim does. So something like Irelia following up from this wouldn't be too much of a surprise here for me.
Yeah, I really like the Yone. I would really like the Akali band as well from Morosco, and then pretty much, again, we said he had the solo queue account literally called Yone Silas Akali or Silas Yone Akali, something like this. The three champions that he plays the most, he's gonna have to move towards a different champion. The other different champion that has played a lot through the summer split and has been banned a lot against him has been the Ari, not necessarily too successful in the previous game, and you also give that Ari ultimate over to the Silas, which is really happy with still away and reach your backline. So we'll see what Morosco's going to choose to go with in the mid lane. To me, it could be something like a Yasuo angle. Right here, you do not have setup and you're going to have to do it yourself, and it's going to have to be extremely difficult with the teammates. Yeah, there you go.
There's the Akali you guys were promising, and there's the
entire account banned.
But also has no more champions to play. Obviously, he has a few that he can bring up. Yeah,
that's it. Open up the game. It's FF angle, but we'll see what Morosco really has in store. Right, he's still likely going to have quite a few mechanical champs at the ready for us, or maybe he gives us something a little bit more boring. We'll see. Just loads of weird hovers. It's kind of hard to talk about, but you mentioned Yasuo. Kiana actually is also on this list. I'm not sure how I feel about it, though.
Morosco is, or used to be, an OTP Kiana.
Right.
He's extremely proficient on the champion, but the thing right here is you're playing versus really difficult champions to reach. So I would like, from the side of Kryze, from the side of XL, to see some engage to the top side of the map, whether that's called Makai, whether that's called Ornn, any of the two, unless Carlson chooses to go with it. That's a Lux together with the Varus, and actually, this is a very squishy composition. I think it's time. I think it's time for Carlson to
bring the Ornn
to sound the horn.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you'd survive quite happily as well through a lot of the damage that XL does have to offer at the moment. It's not really crazy tank busting to get through an Ornn. Same kind of thought process with the Gragas, a little more versatile in terms of disengage, engage, things along those lines, but it does still give Kryze a lot of freedom in the top side to kind of pick whatever he wants into a matchup like Gragas. So we'll see what he wants to pick up here. It's gonna be the Vladimir of all things, and honestly, if he does manage to get access to the backline, he's going to one-shot Varus and the Graves. It's more about whether or not he's going to have consistent damage to get through things like the Viego and the Silas, which, to be fair, I feel like if this Vladimir can get strong enough, it certainly will be able to.
I mean,
What an
you do have.
interesting composition. Yeah, tell me.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. I was trying to like process what I'm seeing with my eyes right
Yeah.
here because you have two hard backline divers with the Vladimir and the Kiana, of course, that want to find the squishes in the backline, like the Varus, like the Lux. But then you have an Ash, which is extremely immobile, together with Heimendinger, who's extremely immobile. And then you've got the Graves into the mix that wants to chill in his jungle and farm. But then you want to get the Kiana ahead in the early game, so she snowballs. But then you have the Vladimir that scales into the late game, and your bot lane is extremely pressuring. So I'm having like all of these thoughts in my head for that JDXL composition. I think it's very skill-based. I think they want to skill check their opponents right here, especially with the Kiana being locked in. On the other hand, again, very Astralis-esque. Senkax on his Silas, so freaking good. We saw it all summer long. It was almost permabanned all summer long. The only thing that I have a little bit of a doubt about is Lux, because I don't necessarily like too much Lux without the Caitlyn combo. But right here, it could be good into something like a poke lane. Again, I would have liked something with a little bit more sustain, like a Soraka, like a Lulu. So I'm waiting to see how Lux will do in the bot lane.
Well, whoever wins this one is going to get 1 foot in the final on the Aurora Open. JDXL and Astralis are looking for that match point, but in order to look at that, we need to jump into the Summon's Rift, and that's why we're going to toss it to the casters. It is Nightmare and Middle Cots.
Hey, Cash, they tossed it to you.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited, Nightmare. JDXL coming out with some weird, niche, interesting picks. This is what I want to see from them. This is what they can do in these series.
And one of the funniest segments we actually did on NLC was talking about JDXL's pros and cons. And one of their pros was unique and flexible drafting. And then one of their negatives was unique in quotation marks and flexible in quotation mark drafting, because it is a risky way to play the game sometimes. And what I would say about this matchup is that JDXL have typically they've typically gone towards niche drafts. They have had these picks in the back pocket, like the Vladimir, like the Kiana. I mean, we've seen the Ash Heimerdinger a bit over Worlds. I think that is more of a known quantity now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's going to have different win conditions compared to more meta drafts than you are used to as a team like Astralis playing against it. But does that match up to just getting socked in the face? Just getting absolutely slapped? Particularly when you have players like Senkax, who has had incredible laning phase performances. When you've given him agency, he's used it well. All well and good playing this Kiana, but if Senkax rolls you in mid lane, good luck playing out this draft.
Well, and he has been the one who's been winning out both of these mid lanes so far in the melee versus melee in the first game, and then the range versus melee into the second game. We criticize him maybe for not getting out on map as much as he could have done, but it was enough to get Astralis the win in that previous game.
Just a quick thing about Kiana at level 1. You don't really get the best combos at level 1. In melee versus melee specifically as Kiana, you see that Morozki's gone for the W start, gives you a little bit of mobility. What you can also do is kind of use it as an auto attack reset. You can use it to hop over to different elements. So he's got the Water Blade right now. If Senkax were to walk into him, you can auto, go to a nearby wall, and then get the extra element proc as well. It's one of the ways you can take some heavier trades even at level 1 as Kiana. You're not a specialist at that point, but Morozki at least giving something back at that point. Now has the level 2, can at least get the Q reset, but he's pushed the wave in. Tax has seen that, and what we were talking about having these unique drafts, if you get slapped in the face level 2 by Taxer and Senkax with this gank combo,
Oh no.
you don't feel particularly good.
Yeah, forced to burn the flash makes a lot of sense. Morozki using that summoner spell to not risk himself falling down, but losing that on a melee mid laner means that Tax is going to smell blood in the water.
Yeah, and it's melee versus melee once again in mid lane. We saw it in game 1. Game 2 was the range versus range, a little bit different. But then you can see now Morozki has to start taking these fights. You don't have a choice. Dan now in this mid lane helping the wave get shoved in, and Senkax getting taken very low.
Yeah, that was... Not sure if that was to fix the wave or to try and kill Senkax. A little bit of both, honestly.
Why not both? Sometimes it comes out that way. But that's going to be the mid lane. Bot lane, of course, we have the Lux being brought in from Kiba. I think he's literally there to try and contest the poke and the range very early on. With Lux E, you can start dealing damage to enemy Heimerdinger turrets. You see the Spectator got a lot to focus on right now. Is really trying to show us what's happening around those enemy Raptors as well. Arm wrestle very early on, of course. It has led to the flash being learned from Morozki. But Dan does get to walk into the enemy jungle, at least take some Raptors. Is still stuck at level 2. Bit of an awkward jungle path from Graves, but I mean, he's just doing his thing. He's just a silly little Graves. He's just doing his thing.
He's an Afrika freak because he's got spirit.
I mean, you could also say for a brief period of time he was a bit of a Fnatic too, but I don't think those fans particularly want to remember that Season 6 period.
Yeah, less said about that, the better. I am intrigued about this switch up in the bot lane for JDXL.
Yes.
Because it's a very different style. The Ashe and the Heimerdinger are much more focused on getting the pressure, getting the poke in lane, less about the all-in.
Yeah, I think when you have double range bot lanes, that's typically how it goes. See that FGG looking for the poke, just making sure that the Scorch keeps ticking, has the Comet landing as well. But see that neither of these lanes have sustain, so all of that poke does stick. You're getting to the point where you know both of them have gone towards cookies in this lane. It makes very much sense in double ranged lanes. But as it stands right now, Astralis losing. Oh, it's a good double bomb actually.
Oh, that's exceptional stuff. Kiba forced to blow the flash. Venza flashing forward, but FGG secures first blood.
Oh, get yourself someone who can do it all. FGG on the rel. Didn't come out with the win of that last game, but still exceptional on the engaged supports. Brings out the mage bot laner.
Hold on. Carlson is falling down. Flashes onto Cries, getting the kill in the 1v2, and Dan does not have enough damage to take down the morbidly obese top laner. Carlson.
Why did you have to word it like that? Why? Well, Roscoe's also dead. Just as we're praising JDXL on the boss side of the map. Wow, awesome. Get themselves a great combo from FGG, who plays the engage, plays the range supports. The solo lanes of JDXL get sucker punched. They get taken down in a 1v2 on top side. Taxa has the angle to go into mid, and now JDXL falling behind in these importantly highly variable, volatile matchups.
And this is one of the issues when you are playing with a Vladimir, with a Graves. There's not a lot of lockdown, so Carlson, as soon as he sees the play, he can just go for it.
Yeah, really punishes Cries for walking into the wave to get the E. You trades it for a W with a grasp on top of him, I'm pretty sure at that point. Gets around to another round of cooldowns, and of course Vlad and Graves, both champions, can play around those minions, and then sadly, Morozki, this is the kind of the secondary loss you have from blowing your flash very early on. Now he's got FGG helping out his wave, of course, but you have to keep taking these traits. Oh gosh, that's a lot of damage though.
Do you? Do you now, Mira? Do you have to keep taking these traits?
Maybe not quite like that, but you don't exactly have a way out of them is the problem at that point. But this is why it really comes back to that conversation about, yeah, you've got all this different win conditions, larger champion pools, bringing out something a little bit unique, but can you actually stand the mechanical test in laning phase around your skirmishes? Because if these champions never get online, it doesn't really matter at that point.
Yeah.
Like Carlson now at the point where I looked at this Vladimir last lock-in and I thought, this is a great pick. Because you're going to have great side lane options versus the Sylas and the Gragas. Your pool actually has a lot of value in this game. You can get out of Varus, even if Varus ults you or the Lux starts charging up stuff, you can just pool it at that point. You know, you're not stunned, you're just rooted. You can use your W to dodge a lot of damage. And you have great scaling teamfight options and side laning options. It really does do it all. You've got to get to that point first. Cries doesn't have a teleport, not able to play the macro as much. You need to be winning side lanes. You need to be winning lane to make sure you arrive at fights and get to choose your battleground more effectively. Losing a kill like that in lane, it does affect how JDXL will play out their win conditions later in the game.
Well, and the thing is as well, JDXL have shown in this series that they misjudge teamfights and skirmishes on occasion. And if you are in a deficit, that's a horrible place to be in, because those like 1% plays that you need to go to get yourselves back in, the game's not at that point yet, but they become a lot harder to execute if you've not quite got the read.
Yeah, we have the read. He's producing for us today. He's not observers. Funny how coincident. It's a small world. Senkex picks up the Supreme Display of Talent. Now, worth noting, it does, of course, react in the same way that Kiana does. Something that a lot of people forget about this champion because we haven't seen it since, like, Season 8 at this point. If you use it in River, it doesn't matter if it hits a wall to actually get the stun portion of it. If it hits a wall with the ultimate, you do get the extra kind of explosion, that ring around the wall, which gives you extra % HP damage. But if it goes into a bush or into river, it still gets that stun afterwards, as it technically counts as going into one of Kiana's chosen terrain types. You know, you've got the grass, you've got the wall, you've got the river. So watch out for that. Lots of ways you can kind of interact with that with Senkex, and of course it does have a large amount of base damage. He's going to have to deal with the Graves coming into his lane, though. Top lane clearing out that wave, but Senkex just happily heading into river, safely avoids Dan's, once again, arrival into mid lane to fix this wave.
And we've been seeing Dan's stuff very similar to the first game, where he is sort of just turning up to these lanes to apply a little bit of pressure, make sure that the wave isn't in a spot where it's completely disastrous for JDXL. And after a few of those fumbles, they have stabilized. The gold lead isn't massive for Astralis, but once again, it's another Herald. Taxa has been so great at picking these up, but this time around, JDXL responding with an objective on the bottom side.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when you're dealing with Herald fights very early on, typically it's about how good your ultimates are, and there are lots of good ultimates on both sides, but I think with Senkux and Carlson winning out in the early lanes, it just kind of tips that a little bit over to Astralis' side, particularly with the Graves not being a point of power as well. Cry's really, again, being bullied out in this lane now. Bruiser is Gragas, has the Barmy Cinder, and Cry's wants to be cycling through these queues, but every time you walk up for that Crimson Rush, Carlson sat there going, all right, I'm going to E into you, I'm going to take a heavier trade. Cry's not at a point now where he can really, with impunity, push in and take harder trades.
Carlson continuing to grow and grow as a player throughout the year. I wouldn't be
The
surprised if, oh, hold on, we're getting engaged with the bot lane. So much damage from FGG. That's unreasonable, mate.
This guy, I mean, we talk about him so much as the engaged roaming player. He is playing the epitome of the laning champion. Stand underneath your turrets. Venza blowing both summoners against Taxa on the retreat, but going back to that kill, it was really well played. A lot of the time, you'll see Heimerdingers, particularly in the support role, you'll want to choose your ults very carefully, and typically when you don't have a lot of damage, you don't use your ultimate W those rockets. But because the ult had already been cast, Christ is gonna have to force away from the flash.
Ooh, Ignite goes down onto the Gragas, the ultimate use from Kryze as well. Is that enough damage to the W to heal up with a passive? No. Only in boots of lucidity, not a lot of AP to back up that Vladimir, but after that trade, Kryze is actually in a much better spot in this top lane.
Yeah, that was closer and stuff actually, because I'm not sure if the body slam actually landed there. I'm not sure if that side step just about came through from Kryze. But yeah, anyway, lots of volatility coming around the map. We are now within 100 gold again, despite Astralis getting those 2 solo lane kills back to back. It has been JDXL just about clawing themselves back to even. I believe we got ourselves a replay of what I really wanted to talk about, because typically you want to have a turret down and you'll use your ult Q sometimes to do that to buy space. Because the turret is already down, he gets the extra kind of beam through, gets the entirety of the W, the extra auto attack afterwards from Venza. Damage calculation really on point. And that's not a skill set you often see from supports which are just picking up the Heimerdinger. So damage is not necessarily always in, like, your one-shot damage isn't always in the back of your head as a support player when you're used to playing something like Leona or something. But yeah, FGG really showing off the skills though.
It really is the Ornn of support players can kind of do it all. The route flashed away from very smart stuff from Kiva, but that's what you need to do.
Or I guess in honor, because of course we come from a bit more of a Japanese League of Legends background. We had a player called Saras out there who loved to play. FGG, he's just taking this all by himself.
That's not okay. I feel a little bit dirty watching this. Is it after 9 PM? Because this is not suitable for before the watershed.
Senkux teleports into the tower on bot side, but not able to do anything after that point too. And while Kryze has been held down a little bit in this Vladimir versus Gragas matchup, having an unlocked Ashe Heimerdinger that can walk into the enemy jungle and just mess with you is really annoying at this point. 3 kills on Heimerdinger, you are not used to that amount of gold on this AP support. Particularly when the Vladimir is actually a little bit far behind, the Heimerdinger can now starting to become a bit more of a damage threat. And Chrisbird doesn't have a flash, doesn't have teammates all too close by, but they are close enough still. JDXL not able to pull off a dive there. But seriously, watch out for FGG's damage. Like, 3 kills on this. I don't know whether this will be the Rylai's first now, or whether it'll actually go straight towards the Andres. Anza, he does have FGG. Yeah, I mean, you see the Heimerdinger turn up, and you're like, yeah, we're not taking that.
Oh, that's a very well-timed Heartbreaker to immune a portion of that stun. That doesn't land, you get knocked out. And FGG probably has a 4th kill at this point.
Yeah, and you really, really have to pay attention to what this Ashe Heimerdinger are going to do. Last game was a much brighter game for Chrisberg and Kiva, but the thing is, this game has not exactly been, you know, the best showing from Astralis' bot lane. And in the first game as well, they had a difficult time of it. I really want to stress, it's not necessarily their fault. When you're playing against just really, really annoying bot lanes, like the Ashe Heimerdinger and other poke lanes, you don't have much choice in it, particularly when JDXL have been using Dan to just roam down towards the bottom side of the map so much and apply this pressure over and over. You can't really blame them for falling far behind, but it doesn't change the fact now that they're going to have a really difficult time impacting this game.
Yeah, but, well, Senkux and Taxa look absolutely fine impacting Roscu in the mid lane. Not going to have to burn that flash defensively, but the Astralis solo laners are doing exceptionally well. We saw the gold briefly a moment ago. Carlson, 1k up on Kryze. Senkux, 1k up on Mrozku as well. We're seeing it again there. Really building these lanes in these individual lanes.
Yeah, it is in FGG we trust. It's in this Ash Heimerdinger because these champions on Astralis, like, they are very strong in their individual dueling, but yeah, walking into areas like this, you walk into a turret stack, you walk into Ash Heimerdinger, no one really wants to tank that. Even the Gragas is going to be a threat of that later into the game. So seriously watch out for that point. Senkox once again with the supreme display of talent. Once again, individual laning lead. Comes back to this whole point about JDXL picking their unique compositions, but struggling to get them online again.
Oh no, Kryze is dead.
Yeah, he's offline. He's flatlined. Kryze is dead.
Yeah, dead on my screen.
Yeah. And this is, again, Astralis, they look at JDXL's comp and go, oh, that's quaint. Now lane against it. Now skirmish against it. They turn up, they just slam Kryze into the ground. And though Kryze has been largely one of the very best top laners within the NLC circuit of 2022, he is really being punished at this point. Astralis not giving him a free game.
So how does this happen? It's Mrozcu and Kryze walking in, just not respecting what Astralis can do to them.
Supreme display of talent as well. The extra CC coming in. As much as the W very good at denying a lot of that damage. Oh, it's Dan caught out now.
Oh yeah, there's nothing for the Graves to do. Dashes forward, but Chrisberg picks up the kill, his first of the game, and Astralis, they're taking the lead that they had in the top half of the Rift, and they're moving down to try and rescue this bot lane. Senkox gets another kill!
Again, you have your unique strategies, but what plan survives just getting struck in the face, just slapped right across it? And Astralis, they are really playing individually, mechanically, on a very high level. Senkox has his Silas. This champion was terrifying throughout NLC Summer, and JDXL and Mrozcu being very much held to account in this game again. One trick or not previously from Mrozcu on this Kiana, struggling so much to keep himself afloat.
Chrisberg having to burn the cleanse there. No real objectives coming up in the next few minutes, so maybe not the most punishing summoner spell as another kill in the mid lane. I love the pressure that Taxa has been putting towards this as well, but I'm not sure. Is this just all Senkox?
I think this is just all Senkox. Mrozcu just about failing out in the ult. Thinks that he can drag him through as he casts the E. Gets a little bit late on the timing there. It's the ER combo from Kiana. It's pretty fast, so occasionally if you just mess that up, depending on how close you are to the enemy champion, sometimes you fly over them before you cast your R, because you can cast it mid-flight. And I think what happened there is that Mrozcu just ends up messing up the timing just a little bit. And Senkox, he just takes the freebie, right? So now Mrozcu, once again, down to CS, gives another kill over to Senkox, and yeah, Mrozcu really, really struggling.
And Senkox was criticized. Well, we criticized him in game one for not really spreading the advantage that he had in the melee versus melee matchup around the rest of the map. Well, he's not doing that in this game, but he's just hammering that matchup even harder, and it's going to be so difficult for Mrozcu to come back into this game. The Kiana is not a champion that functions well from behind.
Yeah, and when you can steal stuff like Ashol, stealing Heimerdinger also very annoying in this game because those of you that don't know, when you're stealing an ultimate which empowers an ability like, say, it's a little bit different for shape changes, but for something like Karma or Heimerdinger, you press R and you get to choose one of those abilities. Might have to choose one of them now. This is a huge combo!
Oh my word! Chrisberg is dead, JDXL. They're going to get a single kill off of the play as Carlson body slams over the wall, but it's proactivity, not something that we've really seen too much from them in this game.
That was a huge combo, but you're right, it's only the one kill. It does break open the lock which Astralis had on the map, though. They finally get to push into mid lane. Turbo Senkox has the stolen Heimerdinger ult, fires out those rockets, clears the wave at least, but JDXL managed to get Mrozcu a little bit of extra farm. They get a kill on the board. They get some room to breathe, very importantly. Good combo. Might not give them the most immediate goal, but it just, again, gives them some space to think about their next play.
And I think that's what you need when you've got something like a Vladimir on the top lane that has been put behind to the extent that Kryze has been. You need that bit of extra time. You need to get to level 16. You need 3 items to really start blowing up these team fights. Credit to JDXL getting the pick there, but Astralis is still doing well.
Mr. Producer, Mr. Reed, can you just hover over one of the 2 Fiendish Codexes in Kryze's inventory, please? I just want to check something really quickly, because you'll see that.
I'm pretty sure. Okay.
It does. Okay. It is. I'm just checking. Sometimes you forget about items, and you're like, does it give a unique cooldown ability passive now? Of course it doesn't. It's going to be some extra cooldown. Reduction in inventory built up from Kryze. Vladimir is one of those champions which just builds random components. Oh, Keeper!
No! Flashes still gets hit. The stopwatch just in time to keep him alive, and FGG actually pretty low. Taxa maybe hunting for a shutdown here as Chrisberg charges up the arrow, the ultimates. Not enough to take out the Heimerdinger, but Astralis, they respond to the play very, very well. And they could be looking for mid tower here.
closer and stuff. Senkuk's once again in the 1v1 versus Morozki, 2-level advantage, and that individual advantage means that JDXL cannot control the bot half of their own jungle, allows Taxa to position aggressively, and that zones JDXL off of this mid turret. Saw this from actually from JDXL in game 1. You win a side lane, you get extra access to that mid lane. Astralis show them how it's done in game 3 as well. Taking themselves an important structure, particularly when you have a lot of champions wondering which one to be pushing, like this Ashe and the Heimerdinger versus the Varus and the Lux. Taking down that mid lane outer turret is very, very important for how you want to play out the game. Astralis, important objective there.
Yeah, and I like this build that Chrisberg has gone towards. It's not the on-hit crit Varus, it is the poke. It is the wave clear potential that can come out. So he's absolutely fine to sit in this mid lane, just firing out those Qs and preventing JDXL from pressuring towards him.
And also, the E and the Q, very good at clearing Heimerdinger turrets too. That's another kind of a side bonus, I suppose, tangential to it. The Lux E with the Varus long-range poke means that FGG, despite the 3 kills, going to have a harder time to leverage that advantage. He's doing his best barrel impression, just wandering across the map and making sure he can get some vision down in this top side. Varus and Lux not roaming over right now, so he's very happy to walk on out of there. Has built up the Ryleys first. I was wondering if it would be the Leandries to accelerate some of that damage, but wants a bit more utility. I might have egoed a little bit if I were in his position, particularly with the amount of ability to do that damage, but as it stands right now, happy to spam out those Ws, stop Astralis from being able to be quite so mobile around this posturing part around this dragon.
JDXL, they do look in position to contest, though.
That's
Ultimate going to be fired out. That's a lot of CC onto Kiva. A lot of damage as well! Explosive from Rozq, but the Supreme Display of Talent goes the wrong way. Again, it's just a single kill for JDXL, and Venza can fire as many arrows as he wants into the back of Carlson, but he's not going to kill the Gragas.
Oh, that's going to pop the shield, but I was wondering if Chrisberg had the W on that, but it's not going to be able to kill Venza even with that poke build. Right, JDXL, they win themselves the poke battle. His posturing phase before the dragon. Hextech coming up, but Senkux has flash, has ultimate. Is in a very strong position, especially with Venza has no flash, and Carlson and Senkux are really looking for it.
Yeah, coming out of the jungle of JDXL, down falling to 40% HP. Heartseeker strike from Taxa, and the explosive shot, the collateral damage, stolen away, taking down its maker Venza. Now in a really rough spot, a double kill for Senkux on the Silas.
And JDXL, they had such a good first part of the fight, but they'd use their ults, they'd use their ability to fend off the Astralis members, kill or not, Astralis running over the back end of the fight.
Rozq alive for just a moment, gets out of there with his health bar relatively intact. Astralis, we were talking about them making macro moves in game 2 to gain advantages, but in game 3, they're just out fighting JDXL.
They are, and particularly Senkux is out fighting JDXL. 5 kills on the Silas matchup. Melee versus melee, once again. Particularly in mid lane matchups, where junglers can so easily impact that lane as they cross from one side of the map to the other. You get a lead, that sticks. It stays there. It just tends to be really annoying if you fall behind. Rozq loses the flash very early on. Senkux never lets up the pressure. The veteran mid laner for Astralis, taking this game into his own hands.
Yeah, this guy has been playing in ERLs before they were even ERLs. Challenger Series back in 2013, playing with a load of people that no longer touch League of Legends with a barge pole, but he's still here, he's still making it happen, showing his quality.
Back in my day, we used to play a best of 7 on our way to school and slept under a tarpaulin. So I guess he really has been around for forever.
Yeah, needs the Yorkshire accent, but I do appreciate that a lot.
See, thing is, I do have my Yorkshire heritage. I still think it would be a front to anyone from Yorkshire for me to try and attempt it live on broadcast, and I'm not sure I'm willing to put my reputation on the line like that. Taxa, not really even playing with his life on the line. He's got a Sundra, of course that gives you some HP components, has a stopwatch, has a Hex Drinker, and you look down the items from Astralis, and JDXL's pick combo, they're looking for the arrow into various forms of damage. It's just very hard to do. It's very hard to get a complete combo with all this combo breaking tools which Astralis have.
And look at Venza, he's not really ahead of Chrisberg anymore because you're going for this lethality setup. The items are just that little bit cheaper, and in 15 more mana time, you get that Mura mana unlock for Chrisberg, and he becomes a disgusting poke machine.
Yeah, the bonus of having the shield bow is that at least you have some sustain to slip to kind of stave off some of the poke, but you're not going to have the same ability as something like you do have some Imperial Mandate Ashe builds, of course, coming through, but having that extra sustain, we'll see how important that is when it comes down to these poke battles. Of course, around the start of the last dragon, JDXL ended up winning that. It has been largely about whether those skill shots hit or, as we just see, miss. It's going to be another one missed at that point, but Chrisberg still cleaning up those minions. Mid lane priority, pushing in that wave. Obviously destroyed that mid lane outer turret. Gonna have to call back to you how important that is, because it allows you to do this, push in beyond the wreckage of that tower, and force JDXL to play more defensively. Astralis taking very much control of this map. They're very happy to play this out right now. Cry's ahead in CS. He has been left on the side lane alone for quite a while. But he's not able to push up that lane. You just blow the ghost at the end of it.
It was a smart dodge back from the explosive cast, but yeah, not really able to apply pressure, not really to interact with Carlson in the most ideal circumstance. And I kind of want to look at what the next 5 minutes look like here for Astralis, because they've got Dragon up in a couple minutes. That's going to be sell point. Baron is on the table as well.
It's about 300 seconds. That's about what it looks like. Not sure what it is in milliseconds. It's going to look like Arrow's landing as well, but the crown was giving Keeper a bit more defensive ability.
Why are you like that, Mera?
That's a very good question. I've been asking myself that a lot in my brief existence. Gosh, but it has been slowed down a bit, which means we can climb around just a little bit more. Because JDSL, Astralis, you can see again, Astralis, they're the ones slowing down the pace of this game. And JDXL, they typically they speed up this game by landing arrows, by playing around vision and getting those picks. Well, what happens when Astralis have the ability to break those picks? With stuff like Crown being built up, by Zhonya's, by Hex Drinkers. Well, it just means that JDXL don't really get the choice to build up those pick opportunities, and they're just slowly bleeding out now. You're losing jungle farm, you're losing side lane farm, and there's the chance that you really don't have the ability to approach something like this Baron or this Dragon in the way that you really want to set up those turrets, to stop Astralis from controlling where you are on the map.
Yeah, there's no vision established in the top side of Astralis' jungle by JDXL, but the blue side team are more than happy to try and clear out the plethora of wards that JDXL have got in their own jungle. Baron, definitely a possibility, but I feel like you want to pick before you start this one up.
I think that would make it safe, right? Particularly with the ability to fire over the wall. Stolen Ash Shot hits Venza.
That's a lot of damage potential.
Oh
the Flash Spectrum Aura as well. Very little that the Ashe can do. Taxa slays them, and now Dan is on the run. The Gore Drinker heals for absolutely nothing. And they say we're looking for a pick.
What can you get here? What can you get?
For Astralis. FGG with a load of damage, but forced to flash away himself, and now Senkux could chase him down. 3 taken off the board by Astralis Talents.
Oh, it's going to be another Mrozku looking for the flank. You can see JDXL at the back end of that play thinking, how the heck do we salvage this? FGG looks for a kill combo, but there was a stopwatch, but there was a Hex Trick. It doesn't even need to use the stopwatch at the end of that. So Taxa walks away, will get that Baron, and Mrozku, much like his support teammate, not able to find some kind of slap back against Astralis, who have used this building pressure to break open the game.
Weird drafts or getting punched in the face. Now, Mera, which is winning right now?
I think the punch has broken a nose. It's knocked a tooth loose, and JDXL, I appreciate what they went for in this game, but when Cries has been set behind the purpose of the pace of this game, when this bot lane, though they were ahead, has not been able to leverage their advantage, this composition has not really matched the pace that it wanted to set. Astralis really, really playing well around their ability to choke out these side lanes, choke out vision, look for the picks of their own, and particularly send Cooks. What a hero performance this guy has had yet again.
Rolling back the years as JDXL not even able to trade for the Hex Drake. Soul point now for Astralis. They lost game 1 in this series, but they're putting themselves in a position where they're close to getting this Nexus, and then it's match point for a spot in the final.
And I know that I was someone that was predicting JDXL to run away with this series. I thought that it would be a 3-1 to them, something along those lines. But right now, Astralis really showing up. And you have to really start wondering, okay, JDXL, this game is very difficult already, but what do you do in the next kind of couple of games, right? Because you already shifted a couple of priorities in this last draft. I mean, looking again for the ult here, but there's a GA. This is very difficult, again, to finish off this Viego. He's so happy to face check in a way that so few champions on JDXL can say the same of.
It feels like they're almost clutching at straws with some of these engaged potentials, throwing out arrows, just hoping that they're going to get a good fight off it. They've got a numbers advantage in the top side for the moment as Chrisberg, well, you're still an AD carry playing against the Kiana, so that's going to happen, but it's just a single pick.
It is just a single pick, but it's gold onto Mrozku. Carlson just around the corner, misses the E.
Yes, gets stunned himself. Still a lot of damage being dealt to the Gragas. Svenza following up, and, well, maybe a step too far here from Mrozku as he's taken low himself. Astralis They're smart. They back away. They recognize that this is a fight that they don't need to take.
They just do not have the damage. That auto attack uptime from Venza was actually pretty high there. He gets a heck of a lot done with the Ranger's focus in terms of the amount of auto attacks he can put into it. But Carlson, 3 items, has himself way more than enough ability to tank through that damage when his W is running. So the tanky top laner of Carlson really able to just slam the door shut on JDXL. That was one of the few times that Venza has even had a chance to auto attack this game.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? You've got the long range of the Varus, the long range of the Lux, so they're innately a little bit safer from this pick. And if you get an arrow onto Carlson, onto Taxa, onto Senkux, I don't think you kill them in time before the rest of Astralis turn up and punch you in the face again.
Exactly, and that gives Astralis so much freedom to just play like this. I mean, Carlson is still, you know, half a screen away from Senkux, but it doesn't matter. He can just walk up. Dan does not have the same degree of freedom. He is locked into the Death Realm and shown himself a countdown timer before he can get back to the fountain.
Yeah, Dan really showing that he doesn't live in the Schengen zone because he can't move around the way that he wants to.
Well, he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. He's back in 20 seconds, but his teammate, he doesn't have the same degree of freedom. FGG, despite an incredible laning phase from the Heimerdinger support, just not able to stabilize the rest of the map. Just can't affect this game. The rest of his team just taking so much damage, they can't defend their own turrets.
Roscute throws back one into that Towers, but the Resurrection, the Guardian Angel will keep Taxa alive. Still going to be forced to flash back, but look at JDXL. The health bars are minuscule and Astralis can keep pushing forward.
They're just playing with their food at this point. Senkux, Carlson again, just still so tanky. Senkux has himself that supreme display of talent. He's level 17, Dan. You do not win that fight.
Yeah, it's the supreme display of Astralis talent right now because they have looked dominant in these past 2 games. Not going through the throat just yet. Inhib's still alive, but JDXL, they're going to need a miracle to come back into this game.
Yeah, and I think actually looking at the next game, I don't know what the desk will feel about this one, but I feel like you have to somehow get yourself a winning mid-jungle TVT because I know that's something which JDXL has struggled with in general. I think that Mrozq's champion pool has, you know, has lended itself towards these melee champions, but if you're going melee versus melee into Senkux, at least choose yourself something and support it to the point where you can get yourself something to play around, because the way that Senkux and Taxa have walked around this map, it's just not something which JDXL have been able to deal with.
Oh no. FGG, you shouldn't be there, mate. It's not a great place to be. Flashes over the wall, needs to be blown, but that's another tool off JDXL. That's another person that is a bit more exploitable in some of these engagements. And, well, Astralis might look to exploit it right now. The cast into the Maw, into Senkux, getting another kill. An immaculate performance from the Astralis talent mid laner, and he is not done. Shane lashing forward, but the huge turnaround from Roscu. The damage isn't quite there to back it up, though. A shutdown onto Kreis. That's big. That's a load of gold for the Vladimir. Just what JDXL needed.
That's something. It doesn't stop the bleeding just yet, but it just gives them something. Just a thread to pull on. Very lucky with JDXL to get away with the health bars blinking as they were. Kreis, Dan walking away with their lives, walking away with a shutdown. And that's going to fund Kreis a unusually large rod on his way to what I would assume to be a death cap next up. But Kreis, we've barely talked about him in this game.
Yeah.
Earlier in the series, when you're on something like that Aatrox, yeah, he had actually a huge impact. He won those side lanes.
Oh, no.
The Aurelia into the Vladimir, he's somewhat struggled, both in laning phase and then through into those side lanes. And though he has such a pedigree, such a reputation in the NLC region, he needs to start really showing up at this point. This Vladimir, level 17, he can be such a big source of damage if he can just get it down.
JDXL starting up the Drake. Senkux is not going to be able to join this fight. The Varusol does go wide, and Kreis level 17.
No!
No!
The W arrow again!
Oh.
That arrow has way too much damage. The execute comes through, and then it's a stolen soul!
Oh, that's huge. That's huge. The one moment that JDXL had on the map where they could maybe get something back gets torn away from them. And now with that soul, Astralis, they are free to start up this Baron. And JDXL, it feels like they've run out of time, Nymera.
It has run out a little while ago. I think that is just the death knell. Chrisberg, the arrow from the heavens. It's been a lot of talk about Senkux in this game, but Chrisberg really just putting the cherry on top, having a moment to really be celebrated. Can we have a look at that again? Because
Oh my word.
when you are at this level, you have
How
maxed
low
out
does
your
it go?
W. You have a lot of missing HP damage. And, like, looking at this, 1000 HP,
Oh, that's a
it's
frame.
close.
That's
It's
barely a
close.
frame.
It goes down to 600 damage. It's not one of those cases where the arrow does more than the smite. It is still a very well-timed arrow. Dan does not get the smite in time. That's crushing for JDXL, because they just got a really big shutdown. They maybe could have gotten to the point where they could have mounted a little bit more of a comeback. It was still going to be difficult, right? But this is just a real damaging blow. That one's got to hurt. That one's got to hurt the mental, because actually Dan has had, again, very good tournament so far. Pretty good series so far as well. That moment, though, you just sat there going, my bad, guys. There's just not much else you can say about that.
One of the worst feelings in the world as a jungler. I wouldn't know what it feels like, but I imagine
You wouldn't know what
it's
it feels
pretty
like.
bad. Yeah, no way. But now for JDXL, they had that little bit of
Specs
hope.
again.
And, that crown from Kiba, such high value, preventing the Lux from being bursted out. That was 2, 3 ultimates invested by JDXL for 60% of a support's HP.
And that just really doesn't feel worth at this point, because your backline access is pretty much gone. You have Mrozku's ultimate, maybe flashing into the backline, but FGG. See,
no.
He just doesn't have a choice here. He is just gone!
Oh, there's no hope. You're gone. Game 4 is on the cards, and JDXL are going to have to find something special if they want to come back into this series, because Astralis, they have looked dominant. 3 defending 2 Nexus towers, but it doesn't look like the defense is going to be pulled off. Cries still, level 17 on the Vlad has the ultimate, but it's not going to be good enough. The Nexus is open. You can flash forward as much as you like, but there's nothing you can do. Astralis talent send themselves to match point in the semi-final.
2-1 up for the boys in red. Sencrux ending on 10-1-4. That's a totally fair scoreline on a totally fair champion. That's Silas. We have seen that band so often in the hands of a competent player, in a winning matchup, in a mid-jungle matchup that can just infinitely put that pressure across the map. I don't think we can see that again. I don't think JDXL can afford to give so many of these picks over. But this is where it becomes so difficult now, because you tried to switch things up in bot lane. The bot lane was fine.
Yeah.
I think what is now quite worrying for them is that the solo lane is particularly Cries. You expect Cries to win out in even matchups-ish, but Carlson seriously taking it to him. We know he has that potential, but to see it in the best of 5, to see it when it really matters, that's really got to rock JDXL and how they approach these drafts now.
Yeah. Reminder, first year in ERLs for Carlson, and he is putting in a banger performance in this series. All of Astralis talent performed exceptionally well in that game. We are going to be jumping to the Analyst Desk to break down how Astralis put themselves to match point.
That is an amazing question. Trouble. How did they?
You want the nice answer or the bad answer?
Oh, I get a choice?
Yeah.
Give me the bad one.
I hate to say the word draft diffy, but man, that was so unplayable. Okay, I know we talk about Torque like a lot and how it has like these crazy drafts, but of course sometimes you have to take into consideration champion pools from your players. And right there, Moscow was completely banned out. But if you already have in mind, I feel like to pick Kiana, then you are for the Vladimir, or you even are for something like the Gragas, and then you've got the choice of a Yasuo and a Kiana in this game. I feel like maybe Torok's hands were a little bit tied onto the Kiana because there weren't many champions left from Morosku. But oh my god, I feel like Senkax has run over Morosku 3 games back to back to back. Now it doesn't matter what champion he chooses to play, whether it's the Akali, whether it's the Sylas, whether it's a control mates like the Swain. I feel like this guy is dictating the pace of the game, unfortunately, for Excel, with whatever champion he chooses to pick. And then when you've stabilized your 2 lanes that were bleeding in game 1, which was top lane and bot lane, then Taxa can actually run free to help Senkax accelerate his lead. And I feel like if Excel do not shut down Senkax one way or another, Astralis is just going to run away with it.
Yeah, Jemana, because you look into the bot side, you see the Ember thing at FGG with the Ashe as well. It worked wonders. FGG is a beast with that champion, and somehow people really enjoy that champion. But the idea is it worked wonders for JDXL. It's just not enough. It seems like Top is able to hold himself in mid lane, as Trouble is saying. It's just far too gone. My question to you, Jemana, is that a savior for JDXL? And if there's a savior, who can be the savior and how can he be the savior?
Ooh, honestly, I think it's more or less between Dana or FGG. I think Dana's still having an okay series. I think that when he's on the Graves, surrounded by these specific lanes, though, outside of maybe this game with that Heimerdinger Ashe, I think he could have played off a little bit more. But I feel like he's definitely kind of hamstringed a bit by the champion. So maybe you can change it. But if you want to stay with the Graves, then give the Graves more setup to work with, right? I think that's the core issue there. I think as well, the trouble with Morozku's champion pool trouble, like you were saying, save it for R5. I think even maybe the issue was picking it at R3. You already saw the Silas. You know it's probably not going to go to the top lane. Just make sure that Morozku's champion pool isn't getting pinched. But I think, yeah, Dan and FGG are still the ones to lean on and rely on for JDXL, but it's still about actually giving them drafts and setups from the early game, from the get-go, so that they can actually play the way that they want to play the game. I think Astralis have really stepped up throughout this series on the team fighting basis and on the fact of definitely individuality towards that top side. I think the fact that Kryze is more or less being manhandled at the moment is an expectation we weren't really looking to be broken. And I think that's also an issue that JDXL are going to have to find a fix for fast, whether it's going towards just weak siders so that you can actually play towards the bot side heavily for FGG counter picks. I'm not sure, but they have to find something because at the moment, I feel like Astralis just have their number right now.
I just want to hit about something that you said about Crash because I completely agree with you. I feel like we talked about Carlsen and how he's developed so much, and he picks his Gragas blind at this point, and he ends up winning the game through top. He blind picks in game two, gets counter picked, he ends up winning the game through top. I feel like if Excel want to win, we saw how Cries is #1 damage per minute in the entirety of the Aurora Cup. He needs to step it up. Bring out the jacks, bring out the gangplank, bring out something that can dominate on the side lane or can dominate in a team fight or both. I don't care if it's going to be a Camille. I don't care if you want to take the Renekton. Just something that has a lot more impact because I feel like I'm missing Christ in this whole deal.
Yeah.
Because FTG was dominating bot lane. Down is constantly ahead on the Graves. Of course, it's a Graves. It's farming. Gets one level ahead. Morozko is gonna struggle. He has only melees in his champion pool. That's a given. Christ needs to step up.
So with this in mind, it means Astralis is one game away to jump into finals, being the first team getting that final spot in Aurora Open, but also kicking JDXL out of the tournament and out of NLC altogether. This is the last tournament for JDXL. Let's see if they can come back from this one, tie it up on the 2v2, or maybe it's Astralis game. Well, we'll let you know as soon as we jump back into pick and ban. So I'll see you soon after the quick break.